viewers, thank you so much for choosing this story, and I truly hope it guides you gently into a peaceful, deeper sleep. Tonight, we're stepping into the hushed corners of a mystery, and I hope this video helps you find the calm you seek. So dim the lights, close your eyes, relax, and let's gently explore the shadows that linger in the quiet. Before we dive in, I always appreciate hearing from you. If you have any thoughts or suggestions on how these stories might help you unwind and improve your sleep, please feel free to share them in the comments below. Your input helps me make Deadly Whispers even better for our quiet community. Now let's begin. Imagine opening your phone to a chilling message, a digital ghost from the past. Then, just days later, an even more unsettling social media post appears. Dead men tell no tale. This wasn't fiction. This was Chelsea Perkins, an OnlyFans model, posting a dark prophecy just before meeting Matthew Dunmire, a man she'd reconnected with from high school. Their reunion, seemingly innocent, masked a meticulously planned act of revenge. But here's the truly shocking part. Hours after a single gunshot pierced the tranquility of a national park, silencing Matthew forever, Chelsea posted a photo of her new tattoo, captioned, "What a great weekend." No remorse, no regret, just a chilling celebration. How can a mind operate with such detached precision, turning alleged past trauma into a cold-blooded execution? This isn't just a murder. It's a terrifying journey into a psyche that defies understanding, leaving you to question the very nature of justice and vengeance. Our story begins not with a bang, but with the quiet, everyday rhythm of high school life in America. Between 2005 and 2009, two young lives, Chelsea Perkins and Matthew Dunmire, intersected within the mundane hallways and classrooms of their high school. They were, by all accounts, just two students among many, sharing a common history, perhaps a few shared classes or fleeting glances, but nothing that hinted at the dark, twisted fate that would inextricably bind them years later. Their interactions, if any, would have been casual, unremarkable fragments of adolescent life, utterly devoid of the profound and tragic impact they would ultimately have on each other. It was a time of innocence, a shared beginning from which their paths would soon dramatically diverge. Years peeled away, and their paths indeed separated. In March 2012, Chelsea Perkins made a significant life shift. She concluded a brief stint in the U.S. Coast Guard, a period during which she met the man who would become her husband, leaving the structured, disciplined world of military service behind. Chelsea embarked on a different journey, one that would eventually lead her into the burgeoning, often controversial world of online content creation. Under the aliases Sabrina Savage or Selena Savage, she began working as an OnlyFans model. This new digital persona, overtly glamorous and publicly accessible, stood in stark contrast to the rigid uniform she once wore. It was a transformation that, while seemingly unrelated to her past, would become a peculiar backdrop to the deeply private and dark narrative that would soon unfold around her. Then came 2017, shattering lives and reputations, whether proven or not. Police in Virginia Beach launched an investigation, a standard, meticulous procedure for such serious claims. Detectives interviewed both parties, gathered statements, and sifted through what evidence they could find. Yet, after their diligent inquiry, law enforcement officials informed the FBI that they simply did not possess enough evidence to file charges, and consequently, the case was dropped. Matthew Dunmire vehemently denied the allegation, asserting that any interaction between them was consensual. Those closest to Matthew, his friends and family, painted a picture of a gentle, laid-back individual, describing him as stunned, shaken, and horrified by Chelsea's accusation. This crucial point, the unproven allegation, would not simply fade away for Chelsea. Instead, it would fester like an open wound, transforming into a deeply rooted grievance, a perceived injustice that would poison her thoughts for years, ultimately culminating in a horrifying, premeditated act of violence. The truth of what transpired in 2017 remains shrouded in the mists of conflicting accounts, a foundational mystery upon which terrible, calculated revenge would slowly be built. For Chelsea, it was a wound that refused to heal, a narrative she would rewrite with blood. Fast forward to February 2021, 4 years after that dropped accusation. The digital age, with its sprawling networks of connectivity, expectedly brought Chelsea Perkins and Matthew Dunmire back into each other's orbits. Simple Facebook reconnection request, accepted perhaps out of casual curiosity. What followed was a series of messages, seemingly innocuous at first, as old acquaintances re-established contact. But for Chelsea, it was anything but casual. This re-engagement was, in chilling hindsight, a meticulously calculated move, the initial, subtle step in a deeply orchestrated plan. They began talking, exchanging updates on their lives. Chelsea, with an innocent enough pretext, informed Matthew that she would be traveling through Cleveland, Ohio, en route to Detroit, Michigan, for a tattoo appointment. It was a plausible story, a common enough travel route for someone in her line of work, and it subtly, perfectly set the stage for a physical meeting in Ohio. Matthew, perhaps completely unaware of the simmering resentment, the deep-seated anger that Chelsea had harbored for years, agreed to meet. The trap was subtly, almost imperceptibly, being set. Cage, each message, a thread tightening around his unsuspecting life as the planned meeting drew closer. A chilling glimpse into Chelsea Perkins' state of mind emerged for those who would later dissect her digital footprint on March 3rd, 2021, just 2 days before she would physically reunite with Matthew, and notably on the very same day she had reconnected with him on Facebook. Chelsea posted a cryptic, yet deeply unsettling phrase on her social media: "Dead men tell no tale." This wasn't some random quote or philosophical musing in the context of what was to come. It was a chilling premonition, a dark declaration of intent. It spoke volumes about a premeditated plan, a cold and calculated mindset, and a chilling disregard for human life. this seemingly ordinary meeting would be his last. Later that evening, Matthew's supervisor provided a crucial eyewitness account. They saw a woman with brown hair, later identified as Chelsea Perkins, arrive in a white smart car. A vehicle registered to her husband. Matthew entered the car and they drove off, heading towards an Airbnb that Chelsea had meticulously rented using her own credit card. Every detail was carefully laid out, a breadcrumb trail leading directly to Chelsea. Yet, at the time, it was simply Matthew meeting someone new, venturing into a weekend that he could never have imagined would end in tragedy. The setting was unremarkable, the actions seemingly mundane, but beneath the surface, a dark current was swiftly carrying Matthew towards his ultimate brutal fate. A puppet on strings he couldn't see. March 6th, 2021 dawned what should have been a typical Saturday for Matthew Dunmire. The morning began with a mundane yet heartbreakingly ordinary text exchange with his girlfriend. "Okay, I'll see you in a little while," he messaged, conveying his clear intention to return home later that day. He also mentioned plans to donate plasma, a routine act that highlighted the normalcy of his anticipated day. These messages paint a poignant picture of a life being lived, of future plans, however small, that were abruptly and brutally cut short. The tragic irony hung heavy in those last known communications, a final testament to the life he thought he was living, unaware of the horror that lay just hours ahead. It was the calm before a storm he couldn't possibly foresee. After their night at the Airbnb, Chelsea and Matthew drove towards a place of natural beauty and tranquility, Cuyahoga Valley National Park, specifically the Terra Vista Natural Study area. The morning light filtered through the budding trees, promising a peaceful hike. This sprawling expanse of forests, waterfalls, and scenic trails, typically a haven for hikers and nature lovers seeking solace, was about to become the backdrop for a horrific act of violence. The contrast between the park's serene beauty and the dark intentions that played out within its boundaries adds a chilling layer to the narrative, a macabre ballet of nature and human depravity. It's unknown what transpired between them during their drive, what final conversations they may have had, or what thoughts consumed Matthew as he stepped out into the crisp morning air of the park. Perhaps he admired the view, perhaps he thought of his girlfriend, perhaps he was simply enjoying the fresh air, utterly oblivious to the fact that he was walking into a meticulously laid trap. Between 11:30 and 11:50 a.m., the peaceful silence of the national park was shattered. Hikers in the vicinity, enjoying a Saturday stroll, reported hearing a single gunshot. It was a sound utterly out of place, an anomaly in the natural symphony of the wilderness, sharp and violent, cutting through the bird song. This solitary, echoing shot marked the precise moment Chelsea Perkins, using a loaded firearm she had deliberately brought with her, fatally shot Matthew Dunmire. The bullet found its mark in the back of his head, an execution-style killing that left no room for doubt about the cold intent behind the act. The serene landscape, moments before alive with nature, had become a silent tomb, and Matthew Dunmire's life is filled with mundane plans and a desire to return home was extinguished with brutal finality. Moments after the shot, another pair of hikers, innocently enjoying their walk, encountered a woman matching Chelsea Perkins' description. What struck them immediately was her peculiar attire. For a national park, black clothing, black knee-high boots, and a black hoodie. It was odd and not hiking gear, a glaring detail that highlighted the unusual and suspicious nature of her presence at such a remote crime scene. She appeared confused, her eyes perhaps distant or vacant, yet expressed no discernible emotion as she eerily asked for directions to the cemetery. Her unsettling composure, even as she inquired about a place of final rest just moments after taking a life, painted a chilling picture of profound detachment. This brief, unsettling encounter served as a critical piece of testimony, placing Chelsea at the scene and offering a first, unsettling glimpse into her post-murder demeanor, a ghost walking among the living, with Matthew's body left behind in the quiet expanse of the park. Chelsea Perkins drove away. Her actions immediately following the murder were nothing short of chilling, damping, displaying an almost clinical detachment instead of fleeing in panic or showing any signs of distress. She proceeded with what she had planned, driving all the way to a tattoo parlor in Michigan. Hours after committing a horrific murder, she was getting new ink, a stark symbol of normalcy in the face of unspeakable violence, as if cleansing herself of the act later that day. She cemented this disturbing disconnect with a social media post. She uploaded a photo to Instagram, proudly displaying her new tattoo, accompanied by the utterly tone-deaf caption, "What a great weekend." This post, a public declaration of pleasure and satisfaction, profoundly conveyed her apparent lack of remorse and an unsettling ability to carry on with her life as if nothing had happened. As if Matthew Dunmire's death was merely an inconvenient detail in her otherwise great weekend. It was a bold, almost defiant act that would later baffle investigators and the public alike. Days later, the tranquil national park still held its grim secret, a silent testament to the violence that had unfolded. On March 9th, 2021, at approximately 11 a.m., the horrific discovery was made. Hikers venturing near the Terra Vista Cemetery area of Cuyahoga Valley National Park stumbled upon Matthew Dunmire's dead body. The sight would have been instantly chilling, a life extinguished in a place meant for serenity. The scene was grim, and an immediate investigation was launched, turning the tranquil park into an active crime scene. The air, once crisp and clean, now carried the heavy weight of dread. Law enforcement descended, a swarm of uniforms and forensic kits meticulously documenting every detail. An autopsy confirmed the chilling cause of death, a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. restaurants and businesses along likely routes became critical. It was here, perhaps, that Matthew was seen buying cigarettes, a red canned drink, and that fateful bottle of Aquafina shortly after meeting Chelsea. A mundane pit stop captured by a camera that would inadvertently seal his killer's fate. On March 30th, 2021, following intense investigative work that spanned state lines and involved multiple agencies, police executed a raid on Chelsea Perkins' house in Virginia. The tension in the air must have been palpable as officers breached the threshold. The search yielded damning evidence. Bullets similar to the one used to kill Matthew Dunmire were found, along with 3 9mm pistols, raising immediate red flags. But the most damning evidence came from forensic analysis, the silent, irrefutable language of DNA. Chelsea Perkins' DNA was found on Matthew's body, including under his fingernails, suggesting a struggle, a moment of desperate defense, or close physical contact, and on his pubic hair, indicating intimacy shortly before his death. Her DNA was also recovered from the Aquafina water bottle found next to Matthew's body in the park, connecting her directly to the murder scene through an everyday object. Investigators meticulously linked Perkins to the shooting through a confluence of modern detective work. GPS data from her devices placed her precisely at the crime scene during the time of the murder. Her chilling social media posts provided insight into her mindset and actions. Phone records confirmed her contact with Matthew and her precise movements before and after the murder. And ballistic analysis unequivocally confirmed that one of her own firearms was the murder weapon. The puzzle pieces, scattered and seemingly disparate, now formed a clear and horrifying picture, pointing unequivocally to Chelsea Perkins as Matthew Dunmire's killer. The painstaking work had paid off. The net was closing as the months dragged on. A different kind of agony consumed Matthew Dunmire's parents, Tommy Lynn Dunmire and John Nelson McQuillan. Their son had been brutally murdered, and Chelsea Perkins, despite the mounting evidence against her, had not yet been arrested. The slow wheels of justice, the bureaucratic processes, and the apparent lack of immediate action plunged them into a profound state of grief and frustration. Tommy Lynn, particularly, was overwhelmed by sorrow, and her mental health gradually deteriorated, consumed by a primal need for vengeance that she felt the system was denying her. The unbearable weight of their loss, coupled with what they perceived as a systemic failure to deliver swift justice, pushed them to a desperate and ultimately tragic decision. They would seek their own vengeance. The despair became so deep, it twisted into a dark resolve. In November 2021, Tommy Lynn Dunmire and John Nelson McQuillan embarked on a desperate journey, driving from Virginia to Washington, D.C. with a singular, misguided purpose to carry out a revenge killing on Chelsea Perkins. The planning must have been shrouded in a grim secrecy, fueled by raw emotion in a horrifying twist of fate. Fueled by grief and a distorted sense of justice, Tommy Lynn Dunmire, disguised as a UPS driver, approached an apartment door she believed belonged to Chelsea. She fired 2 shots, but in a devastating, heartbreaking error. She shot a completely innocent woman, mistaking her for Chelsea Perkins miraculously. The innocent woman survived her injuries, but the incident cemented the tragic, spiraling consequences of vigilante justice. The police, now alerted to a new shooting, quickly began their pursuit. Tommy Lynn, attempting to evade capture, frantically changed the license plates on their vehicle, but it was a futile effort. Law enforcement, now hot on their trail, tracked them down as officers closed in, facing the imminent consequences of her desperate act. Tommy Lynn Dunmire took her own life. The heartbreak deepened. A family shattered by violence, now further fractured by a mother's desperate, misguided act. John McQuillan, Matthew's father, was arrested and later faced the legal repercussions of their ill-fated mission. In 2022, he pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact to assault with intent to kill and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The murder of Matthew Dunmire had claimed yet another life and devastated his remaining family, transforming a single act of violence into a multi-layered tragedy that would echo for years. Meanwhile, Chelsea Perkins continued her life, seemingly oblivious to the chaos and pain she had unleashed. Her social media presence remained active. Her Instagram account, operating under the alias Selena Savage, saw its last post on December 9th, 2021. The very next day, December 10th, 2021, about 5 months after Matthew Dunmire's murder, the long arm of the law finally caught up with her. Chelsea Perkins was arrested in Pensacola, Florida. Reports from her arrest described her as stone-faced and silent, showing no visible emotion, a consistent pattern of chilling detachment. During questioning, she remained unyielding, denying any involvement in Matthew Dunmire's murder, maintaining her emotionless facade despite the mountain of evidence against her. The legal battle for Chelsea Perkins began, a slow and complex process that would unfold over years. In January 2023, federal prosecutors made a significant announcement. They initially stated their intention not to seek the death penalty against Perkins. This decision would significantly shape the trajectory of her defense and potential sentencing, removing the ultimate punishment from the table. As the case progressed, attempts were made to reach a resolution without a full trial. In March 2024, Chelsea Perkins was presented with a plea deal, substantial offer that would have seen her facing a sentence of 27 to 31 years behind bars. It reflected the gravity of the charges and the strength of the prosecution's evidence. However, Perkins defiantly rejected the deal, indicating either a fervent belief in her ability to fight the charges, or perhaps a strategic gamble for an even more lenient outcome. The legal dance continued, a high-stakes game of push and pull. The complexities of capital punishment laws briefly re-entered the picture in February 2025, following an executive order that restored federal executions. The possibility of the death penalty was momentarily revisited by the Department of Justice. significant breakthrough occurred. Chelsea Perkins, after months of legal maneuvering and perhaps a growing realization of the overwhelming evidence against her, changed her stance. She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and using or carrying and discharging a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence on federal property. This plea deal represented a 25% reduction from the previous offer she had rejected, curing her a potential sentence of between 20 and 25 years in prison. It was a partial resolution, bringing an end to the active prosecution, leaving many questions unanswered about her true motives and the psychological landscape that led to Matthew Dunmire's death. As of the current timeline, Chelsea Perkins is scheduled to be sentenced on September 9th, 2025. The courtroom doors will close on this chapter, and she will face the consequences of her actions, likely spending decades behind bars. But even with a guilty plea and a sentence handed down, the full truth of Matthew Dunmire's murder and the mind behind it remains shrouded in layers of mystery and unanswered questions. The timeline of events lays bare the facts, with the motivations, the true depth of the rage, and the chilling composure of Chelsea Perkins continue to haunt this tragic narrative. The grim narrative of Matthew Dunmire's murder by Chelsea Perkins, while seemingly straightforward in its conclusion, is upon closer examination riddled with bewildering contradictions and unsettling ambiguities that defy easy explanations. These aren't mere footnotes. They are gaping questions that transform a simple revenge plot into a psychological labyrinth, leaving investigators and observers alike grappling with the profound complexities of human motive and behavior. These are the details that haunted the case, complicating every assumption and leaving a lingering chill long after the verdict. At the very core of Chelsea Perkins' alleged motive lies the 2017 rape accusation against Matthew Dunmire. This is presented as the undeniable catalyst, the spark that ignited the slow-burning fuse of her vengeance, simmering for 4 long years. Yet the sources explicitly, almost hauntingly, state the truth is that we don't know, and we never will, what truly happened between them in 2017. This single, unresolved point casts a long, unsettling shadow over the entire case, making the very foundation of her motive a it say about the certainty of Chelsea's driving motive? Was her conviction in his guilt so ingrained that it transcended the legal system's findings, becoming a deeply personal, unchallengeable truth in her own mind? Or did a different narrative, perhaps one born of delusion, fester in her psyche, transforming an inconclusive event into an undeniable personal affront demanding fatal retribution? The lack of official substantiation for the rape accusation means that, while it's cited as her motive, its true nature remains shrouded in a deeply unsettling uncertainty. This ambiguity doesn't absolve Chelsea of murder, but it forces us to question the nature of her revenge. Was it the calculated retribution of a true victim, or the chilling manifestation of a deeply disturbed individual acting on an unverified grievance? The answers remain locked away, perhaps forever, in the minds of the two people involved, a testament to the complexities of human memory, perception, and unresolved conflict. This detail doesn't just make the story complex, it makes it a chilling study in subjective reality and its devastating consequences. Perhaps no detail in this case boggles the mind more. As one source notes, God, than the astonishing discovery of Chelsea Perkins' DNA on Matthew Dunmire's body, specifically on his pubic hair and under his fingernails. This forensic evidence confirms with chilling certainty that Chelsea and Matthew were intimate shortly before she pulled the trigger. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. Here is a woman who, for 4 years, allegedly harbored a profound trauma and burning desire for revenge against a man she claimed had raped her. Yet, on the night before she would fatally shoot him in cold blood, she engaged in sexual activity with him. The question screams from the evidence, a piercing echo of bewilderment. Why? This is where the narrative descends into truly unsettling territory. If Matthew was truly her tormentor, the embodiment of a past violation, why would she willingly, or even unwillingly, engage in such a deeply personal and vulnerable act with him again, just hours before his execution? This isn't just contradictory, it's profoundly unsettling. It challenges the very narrative of revenge as a simple, straightforward act of vengeance. Instead, it suggests a far more complex, perhaps even volatile and dysfunctional relationship dynamic between them that extended beyond a simple victim-aggressor framework for investigators. This was a profound psychological puzzle piece. While the DNA was crucial to placing her at the scene and confirming contact, it simultaneously deepened the mystery of her internal world. Did this intimacy suggest a twisted form of manipulation on Chelsea's part? A way to lull Matthew into a false sense of security before the ultimate betrayal? Was it a final, depraved act of psychological control, where she exerted dominance over her alleged abuser one last time before extinguishing his life? Or does it hint at a coercive situation forced upon her that then triggered the final, fatal act? The fact that her DNA was found under his fingernails could suggest a struggle during this intimate encounter, perhaps an escalation that immediately preceded the murder. This detail doesn't negate the murder, possibility that the human psyche, especially when driven by extreme emotion or unresolved trauma, can behave in ways that defy logical reasoning and conventional understanding, leaving both the public and seasoned investigators searching for answers in a moral and psychological abyss. It's a twist that leaves a lingering chill, forcing us to question the nature of their final, deadly hours together. 3 days before Matthew Dunmire was murdered, and on the very same day she reconnected with him on Facebook, Chelsea Perkins posted a phrase that would echo with horrifying significance. "Dead men tell no tale." This ominous statement wasn't buried in a private message. It was a public declaration, chillingly direct and seemingly related to her future actions. It screams premeditation, a cold, calculated plan laid bare for anyone who chose to interpret its dark meaning. This detail is a classic smoking gun in terms of indicating malicious intent and forethought. It suggests that the murder wasn't a crime of passion, a sudden explosion of rage, but a meticulously conceived plot that had been brewing, perhaps for years, and was now meticulously nearing its execution. For investigators, this social media post would have been a profoundly disturbing piece of evidence, almost too perfect in its prophetic nature. It presented an undeniable timeline of planning, yet, despite its chilling clarity, the sources don't elaborate on how this specific detail was leveraged in the legal proceedings. Was it presented as unequivocal proof of her planning? Did Chelsea ever offer an explanation for it, even a fabricated one, during her questioning or in court? Her silence on this, as with so many other aspects of her behavior, leaves a void that the mind rushes to fill. It's a piece of the puzzle that, while screaming intent, remains unexplained by the one person who could truly reveal its meaning. The "Dead Men Tell No Tale" post is more than just a piece of evidence. It's a window into a chilling mindset. It suggests a cold, calculating resolve, a person who had already made the ultimate decision and was merely counting down the days. It implies a desire for absolute silence, for the victim's voice to be forever extinguished, ensuring that his version of their shared history, particularly the 2017 accusation, could never again challenge hers. This detail transforms Chelsea from a potentially traumatized individual into a chillingly strategic perpetrator, adding a layer of deliberate malevolence to her actions. It leaves us wondering about the dark thoughts that must have consumed her in the days leading up to the murder, and the chilling satisfaction she might have derived from such a public yet cryptic declaration. Hours after fatally shooting Matthew Dunmire, Chelsea Perkins drove to a tattoo parlor in Michigan, then posted a photo on Instagram with the caption, "What a great weekend." This grotesque disconnect from the horrific act she had just committed is one of the most psychologically intriguing and unsettling aspects of the case. She then carried on with her life as if nothing had happened for 5 months, continuing to post on social media, smiling for selfies, living a seemingly normal existence while Matthew lay dead in a national park, and his family was consumed by anguish. This apparent lack of remorse or visible distress is profoundly disturbing. it challenges our fundamental understanding of human empathy and the natural psychological toll of taking a life. How could someone commit such an act and then proceed with such casual normalcy? For investigators, this behavior would be baffling, difficult to reconcile with typical criminal profiles. It suggests either an extreme form of psychopathy, where empathy is entirely absent, or a deeply ingrained cognitive dissonance, where the individual rationalizes their actions to such an extent that they genuinely feel no guilt. A retired judge commenting on the case offered one chilling interpretation. Such behavior often suggests a rejection of responsibility or rejection of guilt. The perpetrator, in this view, feels their planned act was actually justifiable. This implies a deeply ingrained sense of righteousness, a belief that her actions were not only deserved, but perhaps even necessary if Chelsea genuinely believed Matthew was guilty of a heinous crime and that the system had failed her. Her subsequent composure could stem from a twisted sense of vindication, the feeling of having finally corrected an injustice. But is it truly vindication or something else entirely? Could it be a sign of a more profound psychological detachment? Perhaps a narcissistic personality that prioritizes self-preservation and self-justification above all else. The sheer audacity of the "What a Great Weekend" post displayed for public consumption speaks volumes about either an astonishing lack of self-awareness or a deliberate, defiant attempt to project an image of unburdened satisfaction. It suggests that Chelsea felt no need to hide, no compulsion to grieve, no internal struggle whatsoever. This chilling composure is a twist in itself, making the perpetrator as mysterious as the crime and forcing us to ponder the depths of the human psyche and its capacity for such profound disassociation. It creates a disturbing portrait of a mind that could commit murder and then simply move on, utterly undisturbed. Finally, resolution of the legal proceedings presented its own set of perplexing twists. Chelsea Perkins initially rejected a plea deal that would have offered her a sentence of 27 to 31 years behind bars. This act of defiance suggested she believed she had a strong case, or perhaps was holding out for something better, gambling on a full trial. Yet she later changed her mind, pleading guilty to a new agreement that significantly reduced her potential sentence to between 20 and 25 years. On the surface, one might speculate, as one source does, that she realized that the evidence was simply so strong that there was no way she would win this. This is a common occurrence in legal battles when facing overwhelming evidence. However, the specific legal negotiations or factors that led to this more lenient plea offer being extended and then accepted are not detailed in the sources. This lack of transparency is a subtle twist in itself. Why the sudden reduction? What leverage did Chelsea or her defense team gain between the rejection of the first offer and the acceptance of the second? Did new information come to light that weakened the prosecution's case in some subtle way, forcing them to offer a more appealing deal to avoid a protracted and potentially risky trial? Or was confession can be as opaque and intriguing as the crime itself, leaving us to speculate about the unseen forces that shape the outcome of justice, and whether true closure is ever fully attained when the deal is struck in the shadows. These are the unsettling turns in the Chelsea Perkins case, details that peel back layers of a seemingly simple narrative to reveal a disturbing and intricate psychological landscape. They are the questions that linger long after the facts are laid bare, forcing us to confront the ambiguities of truth, motive, and the chilling capabilities of the human mind. The Murder of Matthew Dunmire by Chelsea Perkins, a deep dive into psychological and societal complexities. The Murder of Matthew Dunmire by Chelsea Perkins is far more than a simple act of revenge. It's a chilling tapestry woven with threads of perceived injustice, profound psychological complexity, and the agonizing failures of systems meant to protect and provide closure. This case compels us to embark on a deep dive into the psychological landscapes of those involved, the societal undercurrents that perhaps shaped their actions, and the profound ripple effects when conventional justice feels insufficient, leaving scars not just on individuals, but on communities and the very fabric of public trust. At the epicenter of this tragedy lies Chelsea Perkins' 2017 rape accusation against Matthew Dunmire. While it formed the bedrock of Chelsea's motivation, the legal system deemed there was insufficient evidence to press charges, and Matthew vehemently denied it. This fundamental ambiguity forces us to confront a chilling truth. We may never truly know what transpired between them, yet, irrespective of the judicial outcome, for Chelsea, this allegation transformed into a 4-year obsession, culminating in murder. To truly grapple with Chelsea's actions, we must delve into the psychological impact of an unproven yet deeply felt trauma. For an individual who genuinely believes they have been violated and then feels that the justice system has failed, then the psychological fallout can be devastating. This is not to condone her actions, but to explore the potential internal mechanisms at play. The sources indicate that Chelsea harbored this grievance, allowing it to fester and build up within her. This suggests a mind consumed by a sense of profound injustice, where the alleged perpetrator remained free, seemingly unpunished. When an individual perceives that external systems cannot or will not provide the justice they crave, a dangerous internal narrative can take hold, one that validates and even glorifies extra-legal measures. This can escalate into a phenomenon known as vigilante justice, where the individual takes on the role of judge, jury, and executioner, convinced of the righteousness of their cause. The failure to legally validate a deeply personal trauma, whether due to insufficient evidence or systemic limitations, can leave an enduring psychological wound that, for some, warps their perception of justice into a singular destructive quest. This aspect of the case underscores a critical societal challenge. How do we support alleged victims who feel unheard or unvindicated by the formal legal process? And how can trust system be maintained even when definitive answers are elusive. Chelsea's calculated mindset and lack of remorse, powerfully evidenced by her chilling dead men tell no tale Facebook post and her post-murder Instagram celebration, point to a highly organized and perhaps narcissistic personality, a retired judge's insight, suggesting such behavior indicates a rejection of responsibility or rejection of guilt, because the perpetrator feels their planned act was actually justifiable, is crucial. It reveals that her actions may not have been impulsive, but rather the execution of a deeply rooted conviction. This is not merely a psychological defense mechanism. It's a belief in the moral rectitude of her actions. For Chelsea, the murder wasn't a crime, it was a vindication, an act of justice she felt was denied to her. This profound cognitive distortion allows a perpetrator to compartmentalize their actions, to believe they are a righteous agent correcting a wrong rather than a criminal. Her astonishing ability to continue her life as if nothing happened for 5 months underscores this extreme detachment, a psychological armor protecting her from the immense weight of her actions by believing them to be justified. This chilling composure forces us to contemplate the capacity of the human mind to rationalize extreme violence and the frightening implications of such a warped moral compass. Furthermore, Chelsea's dual identity, a former Coast Guard veteran, embodying discipline and public service, gaze, then an OnlyFans model under the savage alias, adds a peculiar layer to her public persona. While not directly a cause of the murder, this contrast hints at an individual who may have cultivated different facets of her identity, perhaps a calculated and controlled image online that belied a turbulent internal world. The Selena Savage persona, with its inherent implication of untamed ferocity, could even be seen as an ironic foreshadowing of the savagery that would define her actions. This dualism between public presentation and private pathology is a common, unsettling thread in true crime, where seemingly normal individuals commit unspeakable acts, forcing us to question the masks people wear. The ripple effect, Matthew's family, and the peril of vigilante justice. The case of Matthew Dunmire's murder is made infinitely more agonizing by the subsequent tragic actions of his parents, their descent into vigilante justice, culminating in the shooting of an innocent woman, and Tommy Lynn Dunmire's suicide is a harrowing testament to the devastating psychological impact of unresolved grief and perceived systemic failure. Matthew's mother, Tommy Lynn, was overwhelmed by sorrow, and her mental health gradually deteriorated. This profound, unaddressed grief, compounded by the excruciating frustration of Chelsea Perkins remaining free for months, stirred to a breaking point when the justice system, in the eyes of victims' families, appears to move too slowly, or not at all. A desperate need for closure can morph into a dangerous impulse for retribution. This phenomenon highlights a critical societal vulnerability when individuals lose faith in established legal mechanisms. They may feel compelled to seek their own, often disastrous turns Matthew's murder into a multi-generational tragedy. Yet it underscores the profound ripple effect of violence, where one act of brutality seeds further destruction and the severe consequences of operating outside the rule of law. It forces us to ask what societal support systems exist for families shattered by violent crime, especially when the legal process is slow or inconclusive. How can public trust in the justice system be maintained to prevent such desperate and destructive acts of self-help? This element of the case is a powerful, albeit heartbreaking, social commentary on the boundaries of grief and the dangers of unchanneled rage. It reminds us that victims' families, though seeking justice, can also become secondary victims of the system's shortcomings and the overwhelming weight of their own pain, creating a cycle of trauma that extends far beyond the initial crime. Societal narratives and the quest for justice, the OnlyFans model's revenge. Headline itself speaks volumes about broader societal factors at play. The inclusion of OnlyFans model in countless media headlines instantly injects a layer of sensationalism and public curiosity, while Chelsea Perkins' profession has no direct bearing on the act of murder itself. It serves as a powerful magnet for attention, feeding into societal fascinations and perhaps even biases related to morality, gender, and digital labor. This element often shapes public perception, potentially leading to both fascination and judgment, rather than a purely objective focus on the crime. It highlights how the media, in its pursuit of engaging narratives, can sometimes inadvertently commercialize tragedy, leveraging trending social phenomena to attract eyeballs, raising ethical questions about the portrayal of victims and perpetrators. The framing of the story as revenge also taps into a powerful human narrative. Revenge is a primal, deeply understandable emotion, and its portrayal can elicit a complex mix of sympathy and condemnation from the public. Some might privately, or even publicly, consider Chelsea's actions justified given the alleged, though unproven, past assault, while others unequivocally condemn her premeditated violence. Retired Judge Vernon Rucker noted that the alleged rape could be seen as a mitigating circumstance in public perception, while emphasizing that the 4 years of contemplation made her actions aggravating legally. This highlights the inherent tension between moral justification in the public sphere and legal culpability within the justice system. The case becomes a battleground for competing narratives, the victim of a past crime seeking justice versus the cold-blooded murderer, forcing a society to grapple with the complexities of its own moral framework. The choice of a national park as the crime scene further amplifies the shock factor. National parks are sanctuaries, symbols of peace, natural beauty, and public safety. The stark juxtaposition of a premeditated execution in such a serene setting heightens the horror and public interest. It violates a sense of safety that these public spaces typically embody, adding another layer of unsettling contrast to the narrative and making the crime feel like a violation of a shared, peaceful space. Finally, the initial lack of trust in its complex, tragic dimensions regarding victim support, media ethics, and the enduring quest for true justice. Unanswered questions and lasting reflections. The case of Chelsea Perkins and the murder of Matthew Dunmire, while brought to a legal conclusion, leaves behind a haunting trail of unanswered questions and profound societal reflections. It's a narrative that transcends the mere facts of a crime, delving deep into the complexities of human pain, the pursuit of justice, and the devastating consequences when those paths diverge into personal retribution. At its heart lies the unresolved shadow of the 2017 rape accusation. While it formed the bedrock of Chelsea's motivation, the legal system deemed there was insufficient evidence to proceed, and Matthew vehemently denied it. This fundamental ambiguity forces us to confront a chilling truth. We may never truly know what transpired between them. Was Chelsea a survivor, driven to the edge by a perceived systemic failure, or was her narrative a twisted justification for a premeditated act born of a different, darker psychological landscape? The answer is crucial to understanding her, yet it remains elusive, leaving us to grapple with the disturbing reality that individual perception, even if unverified, can ignite catastrophic violence. This aspect of the case underscores the immense challenge in balancing the need for legal proof with the lived experiences of alleged victims, highlighting a systemic vulnerability when closure remains out of reach. Then there's the unfathomable psychology of Chelsea Perkins herself, her chilling composure after the murder, getting a tattoo, claiming what a great weekend on Instagram, Raymond, and living a seemingly normal life for months defies conventional understanding of guilt and remorse. Legal experts suggest this points to a rejection of responsibility or guilt, a belief that her planned act was actually justifiable. This raises profound questions about the nature of cold-blooded premeditation. Was her detachment a symptom of a personality disorder, a profound lack of empathy, or a deep-seated conviction that she was merely correcting a grave wrong? Her double life, from Coast Guard veteran to OnlyFans model, adds another layer to her complex identity, perhaps indicating the capacity for compartmentalization that allowed her to reconcile the brutality of her actions with a facade of normalcy. This case challenges us to look beyond simplistic motivations and consider the intricate, often terrifying, workings of the human mind when consumed by perceived injustice and a drive for control. The tragic spiraling of vengeance that enveloped Matthew's family adds another heartbreaking dimension. Tommy Lynn Dunmire and John Nelson McQuillan, consumed by an unbearable grief and a desperate need for justice that felt perpetually denied, resorted to vigilante action. Their attempt at retribution, which tragically harmed an innocent woman and led to Tommy Lynn's suicide, is a stark, devastating lesson. It illustrates the profound emotional toll that violent crime inflicts not just on direct victims, but on their families, pushing some to breaking points where the conventional boundaries of law and morality collapse under the weight of pain. It compels us to reflect on the societal responsibility to support grieving families and to ensure faith in the justice system, however slow it may seem, to prevent such desperate, self-destructive acts from ever occurring. Their story is a powerful, painful warning about the destructive ripple effects of unchanneled rage and the inherent dangers of personal justice. Finally, case became a lightning rod for public discussion, fueled in part by the sensational OnlyFans model headline, and the compelling revenge narrative highlights how media portrayal and societal biases can shape public perception of a crime. It sparked debates. Was Chelsea a justified avenger or a calculated murderer? This dichotomy forces us to examine our own moral compasses, challenging us to distinguish between deeply felt personal grievances and the necessity of upholding a legal framework that prevents anarchy. The setting of a national park, a place typically associated with peace, further amplified the shock and made the crime feel like a violation of something sacred, enhancing its impact on the collective consciousness as Chelsea Perkins awaits sentencing. A legal chapter closes, but the profound human questions remain wide open. What truly constitutes justice when the initial alleged wrong is unproven? What happens when personal trauma festers into a fatal obsession? And how can society better support those who feel failed by the system, ensuring that the path to healing doesn't tragically detour into cycles of further violence? This is more than a true crime story. It's a chilling mirror reflecting the complexities of vengeance, the fragility of trust in institutions, and the unsettling depths of the human psyche. It reminds us that sometimes, even with a verdict, the most profound truths remain unspoken, haunting the silence